Hi there, this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and welcome to another random review. We're talking about my latest film of the year. It's Edged Out a Samurai in Time. I recently did an Umbrella buy one get one free sale video. I did erroneously say that the sale was over. It's actually still on, so go over to Umbrella Entertainment if you want to get some wonderful films for buy one get one. And I talked about an Australian film that I hadn't seen, even though I really should have by now, and I'm glad I finally did, because the film is Long Weekend from 1978 and it's absolutely sensational. As I said, you get the soundtrack for this. If you didn't see my other video, you get the soundtrack CD, you get 8 collection lobby cards, you get interviews with the lead actress Bryony Behetz and director Colin Eggleston's sons. You get an interview with Richard Brennan, the executive producer. There's a new audio interview with Richard Brennan again. There's an extended Not Quite Hollywood documentary interviews with writer Everett de Roche, actress Bryony Behetz and cinematographer Vincent Monton. There's a commentary with the executive producer and the cinematographer. There's a Nature Found Them Guilty panel discussion, which I now kind of get the reason why it's called that. And there's still galleries, trailers, excerpts from Whitsunday Ash, the lost Colin Eggleston film. Colin Eggleston didn't make too many films, but this is absolutely spectacular. It is one of the best films I've ever seen about setting a mood, setting a tone, in a very unsettling, tense tone. You also get obviously these are the art cards and the CD, and of course you get the film. Unbelievable. Again, this is part of the Ozploitation Classics line from Umbrella. This is number 12. I think I've got a couple of them in the collection already. It's multi-region, and it's 235:1 widescreen. So this stars, it's really just a two-hander, 3 if you count Cricket the dog. It gives a moving performance. John Hargreaves on the cover, who you'll recognise from so many Australian films and American films, and Bryony Behetz, which I'm not as familiar with. She did a few films, but she's more famous for soap operas, apparently. And they play a couple who have their issues, which I won't go into, but you'll find out as you watch the film. They're going through a difficult patch together, but they're going to go away out into the wilderness to a nice beach that nobody really goes to for the long weekend, for the holiday weekend. I believe they were supposed to go with another couple, but they cancelled, or another one of the husbands, even though we don't actually know if they're married. One of the man's friend, he's called Peter, she's called Marcia. But on their way to the beach, that's kind of in the middle of nowhere, well, not in the middle, on the edge of nowhere, they stop at the stereotypical gas station, because we know in these sorts of films, once you get to the gas station, you know, that's the last line of civilization. But as we know, gas stations can be a bit weird, where weird people congregate. Now, there's nobody at the gas station that says, oh, don't go any further. But we do get a kind of long shot of one of the locals staring out the window at Marcia in the camper van for what seems an uncomfortably long period of time. And as we know in things like Texas Chainsaw Massacre or, you know, The Hills of Eyes, it's wonderfully kind of set up as that sort of film, that they're going to meet fairly nasty people. Again, the kind of tagline on the poster is "They are trespassers, will they survive their long weekend?" So it's kind of set up as that sort of film, but then is it? You'll have to watch the film to find out. But the atmosphere is just so full of dread. You've got these two characters who, do we like them? Do we not like them? You know, for a period they're kind of nice and friendly to each other, but then there is an underlying issue, which I won't go into, and then they bicker and they fight and they and poor little Cricket is caught in between. But then things around them, the strange noises, like a child crying, their harpoon gun, which the safety was on, goes off and almost kills Marcia. Peter and Cricket find a little doll on the beach covered with mould. Their food goes off a lot quicker than it should have. There's strange things in the water when Peter goes either surfing or swimming. Strange noises. It's a very, again, it's this, the feeling of dread is absolutely incredible, and it's quite an achievement considering it's on a beach, a beautiful beach. A lot of it's in bright sunshine, but there's still such that feeling of unease, a feeling that they're being watched, a feeling that their moments of peace when they're not fighting with each other could just be shattered by forces, supernatural or otherwise. But does it happen? Does it not happen? You'll have to watch the film. Again, I'm not going to go into every single thing that happens, but it's just an incredible film of setting the tone. Again, it's not a huge budget. You know, as I said, it's pretty much a two-hander apart from Cricket the dog. It is a wonderful film about, you know, a struggling relationship. It's also a wonderful film about the differences between men and women. You know, Marcia would rather stay in a hotel, as obviously Peter wants to, you know, he's got his gun, so he shoots his gun a lot, sometimes at things, sometimes just to shoot his gun off. You know, it's the man not necessarily grasping and understanding the full impact of the underlying issue that they have between each other. You know, he has the, you know, that usual masculine thing of, you know, just shake it off and what's the problem and I don't understand. So they're in this little kind of campsite. They've went through this seemingly endless, almost channel with a dirt track road and trees lining it. It's very oppressive. you know, they get the impression they've been going round in circles before they find where they want to actually be, just on the edge of this beach. I mean, it's beautiful locations, which, as I said, is just an amazing juxtaposition between the claustrophobia. Just the tension is unrelenting. You know, even from the moment where Peter drives up to the house where his wife's waiting for them to go, he gets out his car and pulls out his gun and looks at his wife down sniper sights. Already you've got that tension built, and it's tension that never lets up pretty much for the whole, I think it's 97 minutes. It's just perfectly paced, and there's just, you know, there's a certain thing that happens, things move about that shouldn't be moving about, and the level of kind of, as I said, the dread and the tension just kind of builds and builds and builds. If you're a particularly anxious person, I probably wouldn't advise it. You know, it is known as a horror film, I suppose, but it's more the atmosphere. It's got more in common with something like The Haunting, for example, than, you know, a gore-filled horror film. But one of the other things I wanted to mention is the fact you could see this as a Bergman film. Bergman could have made this film as a kind of companion piece to Hour of the Wolf or something like that, because again, it has that relationship core, because again, at its core, it's about two people that are struggling with each other, and are almost at breaking point with each other because of the issue. But you could totally see this as a Bergman film. You could totally see them being city people going to Bergman Island for a wee break to try and come closer as a couple. Yeah, you could totally see this as a Bergman film. But again, it's another film about, you know, city people going to the middle of nowhere, the relationship between people and nature, how has that changed, you know, the ignorance of city people to nature, how to deal with nature, how to treat nature. It's just an absolutely wonderful film, and again, it's a textbook to ramping up tension. You know, it's like that scene in Lost Highway, by David Lynch, of course, whose first 45 minutes of that film is just amongst the best stuff he's ever done. And when Bill Pullman's kind of walking through his own home, there's a shot of Bill Pullman and there's a massive bit of darkness. And as a cinema audience, we've watched enough films that something comes out of the darkness, but Lynch deliberately opens that frame up and nothing comes out of the darkness. Spoiler alert. Nothing comes out of the darkness, and that makes it even more tense and even more nerve-wracking. And pretty much the whole of Long Weekend is like that shot. The whole of Long Weekend is pretty much like that shot in Lost Highway. Your expectations are played with. As I said, the setup at the gas station is, oh, we're going to get some outback hicks. But But does that happen? As I said, you'll have to watch the film to see. Again, this is a film I should have watched years ago. It is one of those classic Australian films, along with The Last Wave, which I've still to see again. I picked that up in the umbrella sale, and obviously Picnic at Hanging Rock. Those sort of tentpole films in Australian film history. But Long Weekend is absolutely fantastic. Again, the soundtrack does its job. It's a very kind of tense and eerie soundtrack as well. Yeah, Lost Weekend has taken the lead in my Film of the Year competition. It's just sensationally good, but it's all about atmosphere. So if you're not into films that have a certain vibe or a certain atmosphere, maybe you just need to be in the right mood, I don't know. But it's a masterclass in how to build tension when you're not in a dark old spooky house. You're in the middle of this beautiful beach with the sun streaming down, and you still make it unbelievably tense and eerie. So thanks very much for watching. Please let me know if you've seen Long Weekend. I'm sure you've all probably seen it, and I'm the last one to actually watch it. But please let me know what you think, and hopefully join me again for more random reviews. This is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, saying farewell.